Group N historic touring cars making their way out on track now. And if you've just made your way back from one of the big attractions, of course, the car show going on in the background behind the old main straight area. Fantastic place to visit. But I've got to say, get yourself back down and squash yourselves up against the window, and I reckon we're about to see the koalas even wake up and have a bit of a look over at the Group N cars as they head around now for their qualifying session. I'm Darren Smith. I'll be with you all weekend long, and I would like to welcome in one of Motorsport's nicest guys, but can get a bit grumpy, so I've got to be careful. I do share the airwaves with him. And he's giving me the international signal for one more thank you, bartender. Darren Knight, welcome to the 2025 Winton Festival of Speed.
Good afternoon, Darren. Good afternoon, everyone out there watching us on the V8 Sleuth YouTube channel. Live streaming here at the Winton Festival of Speed. Thank you very much for that very courteous welcome to Darren. Unfortunately, the qualifying session that was meant to happen for Group N historic touring cars this morning was termed null and void. No one got in more than 1 or 2 laps. You need to do 3 laps for the session to count. We had a red flag. Unfortunately, the Mark Lenstra Mark 1 Cortina blew up comprehensively at the end of the old front straight. It now has a ventilated sump and a lot of oil onto the track and engine components, so unfortunately the red flags came out. So now this will be the sole qualifying session for Group N historic touring cars. 15 minutes for the guys to put down a quick lap. They're being bunched up at the moment, which is great, letting this massive field onto the circuit. We saw this morning cars were still coming out of the pit lane when guys were trying to put together a quick lap. So bunching them up now, so now everyone is safely onto the racing surface, and they'll try and post a quick lap, which will not be easy if you find yourself a little bit further down in the order with this massive 41 car field, Darren.
Yeah, it is. It's at some point, Darren, you've got to be a victim of your own popularity, don't you? And what that transpires as is a very full racetrack to try and qualify on, isn't it?
Yep, well, that's motor racing, as they say. So if you're good enough, you'll find a hole. But, of course, no racing during qualifying, but sometimes people forget that. And there might be a little bit of toing and froing. So let's see how they go. But getting a clear lap is a challenge when the field is this big on the tight confines of Winton Motor Raceway. So Brad Tilley in the number 28. White and blue Ford Mustang leading the pack at the moment. The Tilley family have been involved in historic touring cars for many, many years. Now, of course, we're into our third generation of Tilleys behind the wheel, with Jamie Tilley having a steer now and again. Not in the car this weekend, so now it's Dad Brad behind the wheel. Not very many models have missed out entering this weekend. Huge variance in brands and makes and models, which has always been one of the hallmarks of historic touring cars.
Just harking back to exactly 12 months ago here, Darren, Brad Tilley in the Mustang, and in my opening diatribe there about the field was that he ran that very important 50k race, which is really the feature race of this weekend for the Group N cars. He led it, and he led it very, very well. But certainly in qualifying, a 1:34.24 was what Brad Tilley did last year. Adrian Moyle went, whilst he was at the wheel of a Chevrolet Camaro, did a 1:35.66. Adam Walton, the New South Wales racer, in his Mustang did a 1:36.1. Peter McNiven, who ultimately won that all-important race last year, Daz, was qualified 4th. And I know I was quite amazed, let alone the historic touring car fraternity, that a Mazda had made its way onto the second row of the grid there. But it was an amazing run there, and I think just looking at Peter's car here this morning, there is every intention that he's going to try and qualify that better than 4th here this weekend. The car looks like it's had about 20 millimetres of ride height taken out of it. The stance on it is more aggressive than it's ever been. So it's going to be interesting to see. He's already found himself a nice bit of track right in behind Brad Tilley.
Yeah, Peter McNiven, you mentioned a great win in the 50k race last year when Brad Tilley unfortunately ran out of brakes coming out of the S's, and the Mustang became a bit of a Paris-Dakar machine there for a bit, going over the yumps on the infield there, so very disappointing there for Brad, but what a fantastic drive from Peter McNiven to take the win in that Mazda. He is certainly one to watch. Had a very good performance at the Malala All-Historic meeting back in April this year before he was unfortunately tagged by a local Falcon. So he's just, as Darren mentioned, right behind the white Mustang of Brad Tilley. So certainly has some clear air, and we'll be looking to see some very quick times from the number 13 two-door RX2.
Great to see the Monaro Coupe there in the mix too, just pushing at the front of that field there, and car number 8 there it is at the moment too. So he's Mark Tassari, done a 137, just crossed the line of 137, so cementing himself quite nicely into P2 at the moment.
Mark shares the driving duties of that car with brother David. There he is on screen, the big number 8 HQ Monaro 350 Chev power under the bonnet. This is a Group NC car.
Working pretty hard there too. We can see I'm going to say their light grey driver's gloves gives us great advantage, isn't it? Looking in the window, those fans that are just sort of near the flagpoint heading into turn 3. For those old enough, the old turn 1, we can actually see the hands up on the top of the wheel. The corner goes right, but the hands were turning left. That's dealing with horsepower and oversteer.
And historic touring car usual stance.
It is, yes, it's exactly right. Look, Darren, I alluded earlier on in the broadcast that a lot of these cars are actually seeing horsepower that they never saw back 50 years ago, 45 years ago. The machining technology, the gasket technology, the tuning technology has moved these cars well out of the bracket that they originally raced in.
Certainly, and the RX2 is certainly one of the benefactors of better engine technology. Engine seals, of course, rotor seals were always the bugbear of the Mazdas back in the day. Pretty much sorted that out now with the modern machining and materials we have at our disposal. 289 Windsor-powered Mustangs are now getting in excess of 500 horsepower, which they got nowhere near back in the day.
Yeah, they were talking 360, 370 horsepower to win an Australian Touring Car Championship race, weren't they?
They certainly were. So these cars don't have to have an actual race history. So the class is basically made up of a set of rules to replicate racing prior to 1972. So you can't go putting fuel injection on a car that never had it. So you basically have to run it to the sort of specs that the cars ran back in the day. You are allowed to substitute brakes for some brakes that fit it. So Volvo calipers are quite popular among many of the runners, Capri calipers on the Cortinas. So it's basically period modifications up until the end of 1972.
So we also have seen over the time, interestingly, some Capris that you just mentioned. The brakes on those cars, they ran very, very strongly. The early Capris did very, very well. In fact, there's a red one that was floating around for a couple of seasons with Laurie Nelson at the wheel, the Capri Components man himself. Stepped back into the wheel later in life and did very, very well indeed in a Capri. Just looking here at the different iterations and class cars, because let's face it, you'd head off to the likes of the Armstrong 500 or the Gallagher 500 at Phillip Island, and then later on, of course, the Bathurst 1000 events, and there was multiple classes, and they're still being represented in this sort of racing now.
Most definitely. Phil Barrow on screen, the number 72 FJ Holden. If you want to know what enthusiasm looks like, just go up and talk to Phil Barrow. He just loves this class of car. This model in particular, his father raced an FJ Holden back in the day, so very much an early model Holden family are the Barrows. Puts him some amazing performances in that FJ and likes going Cortina hunting, as he likes to call it.
Now, this is a bona fide Appendix J car too, isn't it?
It's built to replicate a car that his father ran back in the day.
Yep.
Michael Michelli on screen in the number 69 model Ford Fastback Mustang. Good to see Michelli back behind the wheels. Been out of the saddle for a couple of years. Been touring around Australia doing the grey nomad thing, even though he's not grey.
He's sitting in position number 9, and interestingly enough, between him and the front row of the grid is Brad Tilley and Peter McNiven, the guys that both led that race. Just watching the Humpy pull into the midfield there, Darren, just on screen. So the car we were just touching on is parking up very much out of harm's way.
Classic commentator's kiss of death, that one, unfortunately. Sorry about that, Phil. Hopefully nothing too serious.
I don't think it'll dampen his enthusiasm.
Oh, definitely not. He'll be out in the spanners as soon as this session is over. So Brad Tilley fastest at the moment, a 136.6. Peter McNiven in the RX2 is second quickest, a 137.6. And Michelli, third fastest in his return to racing, a 138.4.
A couple of cars that have gone to the pits significantly in the top 10. Monday has gone in, and Murphy, Adrian Moyle's gone in his debut in the purple car, and Dominic Leo has gone into the pits there as well. So a couple of cars that I alluded to before they hit the track that were going to be probably a threat and be pretty quick. Just having a look at a couple of these unders cars here as well, heading around through turn 3 and turn 4, carrying the speed through that turn 4 layout. Used to be a whole lot more of a right angle down there, and we're just getting a good look at the side-on shot of the 21 Mini there of Graham Hill, who I talked up before this. He's a rapid racer, does not mind throwing it down between a Mustang and a Camaro if he can get with them maybe in some damper conditions. Here's the David Brown car, the Datsun 1600 with the orange stripes over the top, and it was dinged up pretty bad coming out of Siberia at the Phillip Island Classic earlier on this year. Great to see it all put back together and in true Brown Davis fashion, put together magnificently.
One of the quickest four-cylinder historic touring cars in the country is the David Brown 1600, so that'll definitely be a car to watch. A few 1600s in the pack this weekend, which is great to see. Vic Draper out there in his blue machine, Dean McLaughlin, his grey machine.
Right in the middle there's Pete Muleman. I mentioned to you the all black. The only thing that's not black is the N and the 43 on the side, which is a nice contrast. It's in white as he puts the power down. And this guy had, for a couple of seasons, was concentrating on the betterment of the equipment, but in the last 12 months has given himself the big focus, given himself the under the microscope treatment in fitness, and done some driver coaching at one of the more famous driver coaching facilities here in Australia. So he's driving very, very nicely.
And a three-time club champion for historic touring cars in Victoria. So Pete Muleman, definitely one of the quicker pre-65 cars in the country. They all black Mustang number 43, the first generation shape Mustang. Trusty little 289 Windsor under the bonnet. Really has that car sorted out well, and he never stops working on it. He's always under the car himself, has a couple of helpers, but never stops working it. Sometimes guys take it a little bit easy with the prep. That is definitely not Peter Muleman.
Flowing it nicely through turn 3 up to 4, a little dab of the brakes just to control the car, settle it for the turn into the corner. Beautiful bit of racetrack laying out in front of him now. The sweeper, the famous sweeper here at Winton. It's famous because of the action that goes on there. It's famous for the challenge that it throws the drivers, because right about now you are really wrestling a car that's gone around a very fast left-hander. You've got to get it over to the other side of the track and then wrestle it all the way down into what is the water tower down at turn 7, 8 and then 9, which over the years many commentators have called it the cleavage down there, and it gets the power down out past the GMSV sign.
We can still say that in that time slot, can't we, Darren?
We can, of course.
So Brad Tilley, still the quickest man out there with just under 1 minute to go in this sole qualifying session for historic touring cars. Mark Tessari has now jumped up to second quickest in the number 8 HQ Monaro, a 137.6 for Tessari. So he's knocked McNiven back to third. Michelli's fourth. Chris Stern, a good performance in his first race in 2 years in the number 90 Ford Mustang. On screen we have Graham Hill in the number 21 Cooper S, Stephen McKay in the number 36 shell coloured Mini Cooper S. Stephen McKay's owned that car for many, many years.
I got to say, this is how we're going to see these two all weekend long now, isn't it? They've found each other. As water finds its level, and these two have found each other out on track. Interestingly enough, car number 3, the RS 1600 Ford Escort in 6th place there. That is a really good lap, a 1:39.20.
Josh Axford, the South Australian, who is worried about getting caught in the pack in this qualifying session, but he's made short work of that. As Darren mentioned, 6th fastest in the little BDA-powered Escort number 3.
So that is a ripper there. Couple of cars there that are really batting above their numbers. They'd love to see the fact that the 43 of Mullerman, the 68 of Monday, even Miles in the Charger there as well. The 27 of David Noakes is another Ford Escort. So, wow, the Escorts are finding the tune nicely early this weekend in qualifying, getting themselves inside that top 10, top 15 area. Gary Finnemore has headed to the pits in the number 9, fastest, 12th fastest there on track in his Ford Mustang Coupe. Another guy that is absolutely one of the great blokes around Victorian motorsport, Gary Finnemore. Took on the old Eddie Obanika fastback in the Vic V8s series, and just loves going racing with this Mustang as well. So he's found himself into 12th position as the checkered flag falls on qualifying there. Daz, short, sharp 16-minute qualifying session for our Group Ns.
Still a few cars circulating, but it looks like Brad Tilley will start out of pole position for tomorrow's first race for Group N Historic Touring Cars. That'll be around 9:15 a.m. and we'll be live on the V8 Sleuth YouTube channel, so make sure you tune in for race 1 for these guys tomorrow morning at 9:15 a.m. and he will start alongside Mark Tassari. So Ford versus Holden, the front row of the grid of Historic Touring Cars. Peter McNiven, great drive in the little Mazda, 3rd quickest, and he'll start alongside Michael Michelli. He'll be pleased with that performance. Michelli, the number 69 Ford Mustang. Chris Stern will be 5th, and he'll start alongside the man Darren just mentioned, Josh Axford, the South Australian, in the BDA Escort number 3. 4th row of the grid will be Adam Bressington in the first of the Cooper S's. Adam has had some fantastic performances here at Winton the last couple of years, so keep an eye on Bresso, the former TCM racer, the Cooper S number 6, and he'll start alongside Pete Muhlman in the number 43 all black Mustang. Jeff Mundy and Glenn Miles, I beg your pardon, in the Charger, so they round out the top 10. Good to see a Charger up into the top 10, Darren.
Yeah, certainly. We obviously saw for many years the Chargers were in this era of Australian touring car racing. Good to see one being represented there as well, as they have done, with the likes of Trevor Talbot and various others over the recent years. Finnemore, Pillikers in there, Brown in his Datsun in there as well. So plenty of things going on there as well. That sees the end of the qualifying session for the Group N. The Heritage Touring Cars and Invited will be the next cars on track for their first race for the weekend. We'll be back in just a couple of moments. We'll have a look at the grid for those cars. Welcome back trackside here at the Winton Motor Raceway. A very big welcome to those watching online, but certainly my advice to you is to pack up the kids, pack up the family, get mum, dad, grandpa, cousins, and all head to the racetrack, because that is a beautiful day here. There is already a healthy crowd making their way into the track. Rest assured there's not a long line out at the gate there at the moment, so you can drive pretty much up, hand over a pittance at the gate and get in and enjoy a really cool day of racing. And we've got the first race for the Group N's rolling out on track now. Now, they should have had a race yesterday, but I'll get Darren Knight to weigh in here. Does huge welcome to day 3 of the 2025 historic Festival of Speed, or the Winton Festival of Speed here, mate. And the first race for Group N's, it's going to be on, isn't it?
Certainly will be. Good morning, Darren. Good morning, everyone at the track, and good morning, everyone tuning in to the V8 Sleuth YouTube channel live stream. As Darren mentioned, should have had a race yesterday, but unfortunately the qualifying session in the morning was brought to a very rapid halt when the Mark Lenstra Cortina unfortunately ventilated its block, and no one put in more than 2 laps. So competition rules, you must complete at least 3 laps to qualify for a grid. So the race yesterday was turned into a qualifying session. So this will be the first time in race conditions for the Group N and invited cars this weekend.
Let's have a look at the grid sheet. A big field, 40 cars making their way out on track. It didn't take too much to work out that the guy that sat on pole last year sits on pole again today. Brad Tilley on pole position, Mark Tessari right next to him. Last year's winner of this race in his RX2 car number 13, Peter McNiven, the Victorian there. Michael Michelli alongside in the 69 Mustang. Chris Stern lines up on position number 5 with Josh Axford. We go back to Adam Bressington in his Mini coming out of position number 7. Now that could be a giant slayer here this weekend. Peter Muleman in the menacing all black number 43. I say that only about the car because Pete Muleman is actually a champion fella, a lovely guy, and really up for a chat at any point in time. In fact, sometimes he's late putting the helmet and driving suit on because he's still chatting to people right throughout the weekend. Jeff Mundy, Glenn Miles in the first of the charges, David Noakes, Gary Finnemore. Great to have Gaz there in the number 9 Mustang. Pillikers, go back to David Brown, the first about Datsuns, Evan Goebel, David Murphy, Craig Miles, Kirk Davis, Rob Burns, great to see Rob back there, Adrian Moyle fronting up in a Mazda here this weekend, Dom Leo, Stephen Hay, Max McKay, Josh Harrison, Dean McLaughlin, Les Walmsley down there in 26 and car number 99, Vic Draper in the number 65. Graham Hill in that blue Mini, and he found his way a long way down there in position number 28. Phil Barrow, Anthony Green, Gordon Cox, Chris Janicki, Don Knight in the number 32, Paul Gilbert, Pete Oliver, Mark Maxwell, Liam Reed, Rodney Evans and Jeff Vo make up the field. And I think we've just about got them all to the grid. It's over to you, Daz. I'm got to get a breath.
Yes, I was waiting for you to do the Barry Oliver breathing to his trick, but he didn't do it. Mark Tessari, unfortunately, is missing from the front row of the grid. The big HQ Monaro should be starting alongside Brad Tilley in the Mustang. So, unfortunately, Tessari is not lined up, which is disappointing after that great qualifying performance yesterday afternoon. Getting very close to a start now, so a nice big hole in front of the Mustang of Michael Michelli, number 69. Keep an eye on him as he blasts off the second row alongside Peter McNiven in the Mazda RX2. And they're away. Good start from Tilley, hooked up very well. McNiven will slide into second in the Mazda.
Wow, Tilley has got himself a ripping start there, and Michelli just but left behind a little bit there, but joined along there is the red and black Mustang, buried back down through the field. Here comes that fantastic Escort. This is a perfect place for the Minis and Escorts to weigh in on it. 69 of Michelli just handling this newly relined, it's 4 years ago, relined turn number 4. Chris, and away we go.
Chris Stern up into 4th in his 68 model Ford Mustang with a 302 Windsor under the bonnet. Josh Axford very quick away in the South Australian Escort number 3. In fact, right on the tail of Chris Stern. Adam Bressington already having a look under the number 43 all-black Mustang of Pete Muleman. Adrian Moyle I saw in the background there just having a bit of an off in the ex-Darren Hossack purple 4-door RX2s. Hopefully Adrian's back on the track. Had a troublesome qualifying session yesterday in his first run with the little Mazda.
Yeah, and Darren Hossack was down there with him yesterday trying to rectify a problem they had with that car, and I think they've got it right, but it's obviously found some pace and run off the track down there on cold tyres. Really, it's still, we're up to about 9 degrees now here locally, and the sun's been on the track for a good couple of hours now, but once that air temperature just gets up a little bit more, these cars will certainly, I'm going to say, maybe not this race, but maybe their second race, the tyre will come back into question here. And this is probably where the Escorts and the Minis are starting to find their way very nicely indeed, being that they don't quite need as much grip as these big cars as they push the limits. But Brad Tilley and the Tilley family are absolutely synonymous with top flight, podium winning Group N cars, and this at the moment in this what's going to be a shorter race. This is only an 8-minute duration race, and we're only got just over a minute and a half left in this one as well, so it's a short, sharp affair here today. But certainly the main event, and you've got to say the premium event of the weekend, will be the historic touring cars for their 50k race this afternoon. So this is a short, sharp warm-up and get their feel away, because they only had a very, well, as Darren said, a short qualifying session that was chopped up yesterday, and then a proper qualifying session later yesterday. So this is their first hit out in earnest, but Brad Tilley is certainly proving his worth.
Brad Tilley absolutely checking out. Look at the lead he has. Almost the length of the old back straight now, heading into we call it the new part of the track. It's probably 25 years old now. It just shows you how old we are. Brad Tilley, great performance on a very cold track. Peter McNiven holding down second place in the Mazda with Michael Michelli third. Josh Axford up now into fifth. Got in front of the Mustang of Chris Stern on that lap. So great performance there from Axford up into fourth, in fact. So Stern back to fifth in the Mustang as Brad Tilley continues to lead.
Josh Axford, the South Australian there in the Ford Escort RS 1600. Very rapid little piece of kit at the moment, but not being able to take it up to the highly strung Tilley Mustang, and we're getting some great shots of the Tilley Mustang. Probably give us a look back at positions 2 and 3 in this race, because that's really where it is, and into the mid-pack where we start to see where Mundy is. Peter Muleman, Miles sort of battling it out for position 6th, 7th, 8th and 9th on the road. There's some good movers in there. Muleman now coming under attack by the Miles Charger. It's a great mix of and representation of Australian Touring Car Championship cars and drivers, Mustangs, HQ, Holdens. Sadly, Mark Tsari hasn't been out on this grid, so Daz, if he does get out there, he'll be off the back of the grid for the big race for the Group N's at 1:30 today.
Peter McNiven on screen in the RX2. He won the 50k Cup, the Just Cars Magazine 50k Cup last year. The longest race we have for historic touring cars in the land. Of that exciting finish with Brad Tilley, who was leading in the Mustang. Unfortunately, had some brake issues, had zero pedal as he came out of the S's, and Peter McNiven went on to take the win. So holding the Mazda flag up high at the moment in second place. Jason Humble, I know he is this weekend not competing, but he's spectating. His fellow racer Andrew Williams suggested that Jason might be a bit scared of Winton, just looking for the reaction because they're right down on the fence in front of me. So Jason Humble will be back at the Bend for the Bend Classic in October in that famous little RX2 of his. But Peter McNiven doing the job for the Mazda boys at the moment, up in second place in front of the Michael Michelli Ford Mustang. Axford still fourth, then it's Chris Stern in the Mustang fifth. There's Chris Stern, his first race meeting for 2 years in the number 90 68 model Ford Mustang. So we have 3 generations of the Mustangs racing this weekend. Jeff Mundy in the 68 model Chevy Camaro has his hands full with the all-black Mustang with Peter Muleman right behind him. That's a huge battle for 6th place at the moment.
David Brown in 12th place there in the Datsun as well, just in the back of that last shot going through, and running very, very wide in the Mini there. Great memories of Minis around here, and I always hark back to the great Ted Brewster, who there was a tribute race held for Ted here not that long ago with all Minis on track, and an absolute worthy tribute for a great bloke of Australian motorsport. Under brakes now.
Don Knight, the Ford Cortina Mark 1 GT, number 32, having a battle there with Gordon Cox in the second generation Cortina GT. That's the Mark II model with a 1600 Kent under the bonnet. Cox goes through on Knight. Cox, of course, the racetrack representative for Racer Industries. He has the trackside van here at most meetings in Victoria. Puts up the old sign. He'll be back in 10 minutes. He's got a race.
Yeah, and has been for some time. Great to see Coxie at the racetrack. There he is in the 77, getting through it on Knight quite easily actually down there in turn 4. Knight just sort of capitulated and allowed him to press on through. And now timing screen is telling us we've gone 3 minutes over time here, so not too sure how many laps this race is going to be now, but the official race time tells us time is up, and we're still going for it.
Have to keep an eye on that checkered flag.
We do. We absolutely do keep an eye on that spot there, and well, at the moment it's not going to be too hard. We're just going to keep one eye on Brad Tilley. He's around at the water tower now, plunges into the cleavage and around the old gum tree. A couple of iconic parts of the Winton Motor Raceway. As soon as you say those three words, people know exactly which part of the racetrack you were on. And around past the GMSV hoardings up at the top end of the track. Past all the campers. Great to see, Daz, the campers here this week. It really does give the title of this weekend is it a festival, and when you put tents up, that to me means it's a festival. That's what the music industry says anyway.
There's an idea for next year.
Yes, isn't it?
How about we get Grinspoon playing in the car park?
It'd attract a whole lot of campers, wouldn't it?
And commentators.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
Brad Tilley leading this first race for the Group N historic touring car.
There's the checkered.
And will take the win in the Ford Mustang. The little 289 Windsor under the bonnet of the Mustang of Brad Tilley, doing the job. Brad been steering these types of cars for many, many years. Takes a very easy win over Peter McNiven. A great drive in the little Mazda RX-2. Josh Axford might have crossed the line in third. I think we've lost Michelli on that final lap, have we? Just waiting for the timing to update.
No, there's Michelli. He's gone through.
Yep,
definitely gone through in the 69, the blue Mustang.
So a good return for Michael Michelli. Hasn't raced like Chris Dern for a couple of years. So excellent drive into third place in the Boss Mustang, number 69. Axford, great drive into fourth and little Escort. He'll be pretty pleased with that. Chris Dern will be fifth. Jeff Mundy will be sixth in his 68 model number 6 Chevy Camaro. He had a great battle there holding out Pete Muleman, the three-time club champion for historic touring cars in Victoria. He was 7th in the Mustang. Glenn Miles, the first of the Chargers. 2 Chargers out there, the Miles boys. So good drive there from Miles to be 8th outright. David Murphy in his beautiful white XU1 number 101 was 9th. And Adam Bressington doing it for the Mini fans, finishing in the top 10.
Great to see Andy Williams and Jason Humble waving to their mates in Group N as they go past. I think they must think they're the king and queen, just giving their nice little wrist shuffle wave to the guys going through. But a massive field of Group N's, and Daz, this is really going to be light up the venue here at 1:30 today for the Group N, their main race for the day. Really looking forward to that. I'm going to put you on the spot here.
Thanks very much.
Look at the front row of the grid. It's last year's 1 and 2, and they're going to have the front row of the grid. How do you see that playing out?
Well, the V8 boys particularly will have to be filling up those tanks, because there's been a few times when we've run these longer races early on in the piece and people are trying to save a little bit of weight by not putting as much fuel in the tanks and then pay the price when they're running out, which is always slightly embarrassing. So the V8s will be brimmed for sure, and also the smaller cars, McNiven, Axford, they may come into play with their lighter weight, not using up the brakes and tyres as much as the big V8s do. We're looking at around 16 or 17 laps, and that's quite a journey for some of these V8s with brakes and tyres. So that will be very interesting. We saw that great race, obviously, last year between Tilley and McNiven, and they will certainly be in the mix as they head towards the checkered flag for that 17-lapper, the Just Cars Cup, 50K Cup, the longest race for historic touring cars just about in the country, I think. Yep. There's not many races that are that long. So make sure you are trackside for that, or tuned in, of course, to the old V8 Sleuth YouTube channel. That race will be on around 1:55 this afternoon.
So keep yourself well and truly rugged up here at the track. It's a lovely day. Sun is out. People have got the puffer jackets and duffel coats on and beanies still. But if you're at home, I thoroughly recommend that you turn the TV off, jump in your car and head to the racetrack. You will not be disappointed here today. We'll take a quick break, because up next is the Heritage Touring Cars and Invited. Back in a moment.
Good afternoon, folks. Darren Knight here to bring you the final race of the 2025 Winton Festival of Speed for Group N historic touring cars. So fantastic machines that represent the type of touring cars we ran in Australia up until the end of 1972. So we have a Group NB out there, which runs from 1959 to 1964, and then Group NC, which ran from 1965 through to the end of 1972. As I welcome back to the microphone, Darren Smith. This is the big one, the big 50K, not $50,000, but 50 kilometres. So the longest race we run for historic touring cars in the land, around 16 or 17 laps, Daz.
Yeah, absolutely, Darren. Fantastic to have you up here with this as well. No one quite knows how to call Group N races like you do, and it's
race hasn't
awesome
started yet.
to have you. Elson, I'm talking you up, mate. You got to go with me on this. Absolutely, and I'm not sure whether we've explained to the races that 50K is a distance, not
prize money.
I got to say, race drivers will focus on the money first and foremost every single time. So we'll see how that plays out for us at the end of today. Let's have a look at this grid sheet. It is absolutely stacked with variety and speed. And I'm going to put the first one on the pole position, and that's the speed. Brad Tilley in that white Mustang takes up the front row of the grid. Right beside him, the guy that snatched the victory here last year, famously in his RX2, Peter McNiven, with Michael Michelli, a very winning driver, returning to the Group N ranks, and Josh Axford. So on the driver's right of the grid is an RX2 and an Escort, and on the other side of the grid is two Mustangs. So we've got this typically Winton battle, haven't we?
Exactly, the big and the small cars, and it would be an appropriate time now to tell you why a lot of the cars have their headlights on. That is a tribute to the late Robert Van Stockram, Hot Dog, as he was affectionately known in the club. Unfortunately, we lost Rob a couple of weeks ago. He was a Group N racer, starting out in a BMW and then a 68 Ford Mustang. A real great personality around the club and contributor to the Historic Touring Car Association of Victoria. So Rob, this one's for you, mate. The headlights are on, and I'm thinking we're going to leave the front two grid spots vacant in honour of Rob Van Stockram. All the cars have a little hot dog sticker on the back window, nicknamed Hot Dog. He used to run a series of hot dog vans in his early business life and was a very successful businessman. So we remember Rob Van Stockram.
A nice tribute there as well. Peter Mullerman in number 43 will come out of 7th. Glenn Miles, the first of the Chargers. Then we have David Murphy. Adam Bressington in the first of the Minis. Gary Finnemore in his Mustang. David Noakes out of 12. Kirk Davis out of 13. Robert Burns out of 71. Evan Goebel out of South Australia will start out of 15th. Stephen McKay out of 16th. David Brown, the first of the Datsun 1600s, will start out of 17th. Max McKay is next on the grid. John Harrison, Phil Barrow, Dean McLaughlin, Anthony Green, Graham Hill in the blue Mini, Vic Draper, Gordon Cox, Don Knight out of 26, Christian Danicki, Les Walmsley, as we look for a race start.
McNiven in the Mazda. Can he beat the Mustang off the line? Here they go, folks. The 50K Cup for historic touring cars down into turn one for the first time. Brad Tilley will take the lead narrowly in front of Peter McNiven. Michael Michelli is third, a big battle for fourth now behind Michelli. Josh Axford in the Escort has Jeff Munday, who's made a great start in the 68 model, number 68 Chevy Camaro. So Munday now attacking Axford in the Escort.
Gee, David Murphy was all at sea there. He managed to slip, slide and wobble his way down through two there, and getting a ripping start there. Adrian Moyle's got a good start in the ex-Hossack RX2 as well. He's jumped about 10 places. He was far rear of the grid, and he's pushing pretty hard. Reminiscent of last year, Brad Tilley, what he's got to do, Darren, it's fairly obvious he's run away and hide, isn't it? Just go hard and get away from the pack.
Going to have to look after the brakes and tyres. 16 or 17 laps. It's a fairly decent distance for these cars that usually run sort of about 6 or 7 laps at most meetings around the country. So Brad, he's not going to have it all his own way. He's going to have to look after the equipment with the much lighter RX2 of McNiven a lot easier on the components.
And Axford as well in that escort will certainly feature as the laps start to churn on. I'm going to say we're going to get about 10 to 12 laps out of the heavier cars, and that's where their lap times will start to just slip away a little bit here. But you cannot take anything away from any one of the Tilley family. When they go to a racetrack, they go there to be fast.
Well, did you see that up on the curve?
Yeah.
Second lap, Brad Tilley really getting into it. I think I saw some air under a rear wheel there,
yes,
which is quite unusual in a Mustang. So Brad is putting the hammer down and trying to build a buffer on our second place man, Peter McNiven, in that bright red Mazda RX-2 number 13.
Up across the top of the hill, there's the RX-2 in the background. I can report 2.5 second lead on the opening lap of this race as Tilley decides that the runaway and hide, be the rabbit, just run away as fast as you possibly can. Great manoeuvres through the field. Have a look at this.
Evan Goebel in the XU1 going up the inside of David Noakes in the twin cam escort. They're trying to latch onto the tail of David Brown in the Datsun. So great battle between Goebel and the number 7 XU1. Running the trusty old Sprintmaster mags too. But David. Darren.
That'll do. Whatever you want, mate. That's
as long as it's not Mary.
It is a beautiful car. That for me, if I was going to have an XU1, is red with that black underpinning. Is you do it, and yeah, getting out after David Brown in that little L series powered 1600, the venerable L1600, the Datsun 1600 with the L1600 engine in it is how many people have got their start, whether it be circuit racing or rallying in a Datsun 1600. I still think people get their start in a Datsun 1600 in rallying.
Magnificent platform that was for motorsport in a lot of categories. So we're watching at the moment the battle towards the mid-pack there. There's Brown in the Datsun 1600 Darren was talking about. Goebel in the XU1, which was presented very worthily with the best presented car yesterday, the South Australian in the XU1. What a giant killing machine that was against the big Hoeys back in the day.
Certainly were. There was a different engineering iteration. The General Motors, under the tutelage of Harry Firth, they took it up to them and took it up to Howard Marsden, in fact, in the Ford tent, and they did a pretty strong job of it. They had a very talented driver line up and engineering package to back it up. There's a humpy going through, and that is a hark back to the genuine and original days of Australian touring car racing. Great camera shot there, just watching car number 40 slide through turn 1 and 2. That's the Dean McLaughlin Datsun. And we focus on a couple of Mini Cooper S's.
That is Stephen McKay and Max McKay, so father and son running line astern there. Could be an interesting discussion around the dinner table if there's any body contact. I'm sure there won't be. Stephen McKay been racing that yellow Mini for many, many years, and Max McKay having his first steer of the ex-Adrian Reed Cooper S as Adrian Moyle goes off in the RX2. He had an unfortunate incident this morning. He contact with the Miles Charger, so Adrian Moyle having all sorts of issues trying to get the car back onto the track in that damp grass.
There he is, the number 18, a car we saw Darren Hossack really manhandle around the Group N calendar for a couple of seasons. Darren's gone back to a sports sedan, got himself an RX-7. He's running in the Victorian State Series at the moment with that particular car. But the Adrian Moore getting a hold of that car here this weekend. There's been some challenges, but he was charging from the rear of the grid and actually got up to mid-pack. Have a look at this one. This RX-2, well handled, well sorted, driven absolutely brilliantly. Currently sitting second on the road. The gap to our race leader, Brad Tilley, 4.3 seconds. That can be made up later on in the race fairly quickly. If the Tilley car drops off the boil, the McNiven car won't. It'll use its brakes and tyres quite neatly indeed. Big flame out the back, synonymous with rotary-powered race cars as he cracks through a gear. Some raw fuel gets burnt in the exhaust pipe. But there's our race leader, Brad Tilley.
That car is a 289 Windsor-powered Mustang, so first-generation Mustang, but it is running to Group NC spec, so it allowed a slightly wider wheel. NC cars, the 65 to 72 cars, are allowed an 8-inch wide maximum wheel width, whereas the pre-65 cars are limited to a 6-inch wheel.
it's not a lot of rubber when you think about it. The lap times that they're turning, these cars are certainly going faster with modern machining and tyre technology, brake pad technology, all of that sort of thing. They're going faster than what they were in the day. So it's a testament to keeping these aging pieces of equipment. There's the replay.
Adrian, yeah, he's having a difficult weekend with that car. His first time behind the wheel. Usually races a 68 Chevy Camaro, and this really is chalk and cheese, isn't it? The Camaro versus the RX2. So Adrian's still getting used to the car, but I'm sure he'll get there. He's done very well in the Camaro the last couple of years.
Well, the good thing about it is that the previous owner of the car is there to help out. Good shot of the back of that HQ, chasing down from the rear of the grid.
I fear that might be Adam Bressington, perhaps, in the Cupras. He is retiring his Mini. May not be. I'll just haven't got confirmation of that just yet. No, it is Bressington, unfortunately.
The 68 now pushing through. That's Jeff Mundy, and he is currently sitting back in position number 5, and he's got the Glenn Miles entry in behind him, David Murphy, Chris Stern, Peter Muehlman in the beautiful all black Mustang.
David Murphy, the white XU1 on screen now, attacking the Charger of Glenn Miles. So the two Aussie 6-cylinder powered supercars getting stuck right into it. Murphy almost touching the rear bumper of Miles as they head through the twisty bits of the top end of the circuit.
You get the feel that Camaro is just wreaking havoc with these two 6-cylinders, and this is where the Camaro will come into its own, power down, run down to turn 10 down the old back straight, and just up the road is that brilliantly driven car, Josh Axford in the Escort, and Michael Michelli, who is currently sitting in position number 3.
So that's a battle for third. Michelli having his first visit to Winton in 14 years. I couldn't believe it when he told me this morning. Last raced here in a red XW Falcon Group N car. So his first time at the Mustang and his first time in 14 years here at the track. Had a great run so far, a podium this morning, and still running third at the moment. But Axford is trying to change all of that in the number 3 BDA-powered Escort.
Peter McNiven is now holding Brad Tilley at 4.5 seconds, and Tilley on lap number 3 did the fastest lap of a 1:37.2. So that's a pretty good lap time in anyone's imagination. There's no one else that's gone into the 37s. In fact, McNiven in position 2, a 38.06, so very close to a 37. No one else in the 38s. There's a plethora of cars in the 39s and 40s. So at the moment, Brad Tilley just working in his zone of his own out there. So that's pretty cool to see him going about that at the moment. The HQ running on through there as well, getting a good run in the mid-pack.
Miles now getting very close in his Charger as he attacks the Chevy Camaro, the 5th place Chevy Camaro of Jeff Mundy. David Murphy not far behind Miles as well. The Charger, the famous 265 Hemi under the bonnet with a 4-speed, so running to E49 specs. That was a real bugbear for the Charger back in the day with the initial E37 and E38 with that lovely 3-speed gearbox. It really wasn't enough.
No, it wasn't. In the slant 6, once they gave it that extra cog, it started to operate a lot more often in its preferred rev range, didn't it? That was the secret to getting that vehicle successful.
One of the issues too with the Charger was the brakes were not fantastic, or the handling. I remember speaking to the great Graham Tubby Ritter about his Bathurst one year, and he said it was quite special house.
I know Tom Norton, a guy who commentated for many, many years. He was also fairly similar comment, the chemist from Brighton.
You can substitute that word special for something else. I'll leave that to your imagination.
They did it though, didn't they? They muscled through, and they got the job done, and more often than not finished.
The great Dougie Shivers, of course, finished on the podium after a wheel nut jam, and they couldn't change the tyres, so it ran on the same tyres for the whole Bathurst race, which is quite amazing. The great Dougie Shivers, he was definitely a race car whisperer.
Yeah, he was, wasn't he? Yep. Yeah, famous footage of him pushing the Tirana up the hill into the pits at the 1000. But hey, let's have a look at what we've got on our plate here. This is the main course here this weekend. There goes Pete McNiven, last year's winner of this race. A very well presented RX2. The stance on it is purposeful. They've managed to just sneak a little bit more ride height out of that one. The biggest problem with the RX sort of cars is that you've got to run a nice flowing exhaust, and they tend to hang pretty low, so your ride height does have to remain at a certain point of view.
So Chile's still leading from our second place man McNiven, who's starting to put a lap on some of our back markers, which could make things interesting.
Yeah, very interesting indeed. Brad Tilley now 139.24. Here's where we transition. Here it is right now. Last time round, Pete McNiven a 138.8. Brad Tilley a 139.2. So, and we go back to Josh Axford, who Michelli in front of him is now operating in the 140s, and Axford is still holding on to a 139. So we've sort of crossed the abyss there with the lap times. The bigger cars just easing out a second to a second and a half a lap, whereas the smaller cars just hanging on to their lap time over the entire race journey.
Not sure if David Brown was having an issue there, and the Datsun didn't seem to be looking at full speed, so we'll keep an eye on the white Datsun 1600 of Brown, usually one of the quickest, smaller cars in this category.
Just watching coming around to the S's there into... Ooh, is a Mini gone off? Is that the Hill entry?
Richard Hill just having an excursion, but back on the track. Miles can still not find a way past Jeff Munday. He's got a couple of car lengths lead now over Miles and the white XU1 of David Murphy. Chris Stern is right there too, now joining the battle for fifth. So Chris Stern in that 68 model Ford Mustang number 90, having his first race meeting in a couple of years. Les Walmsley, the number 99 Mark 1 GT Cortina, unfortunately copped a 30-second penalty after a yellow flag infringement this morning, so he's having to fight his way back from a little bit further down in the grid.
Battling it out there with Draper in the 1600. So this is just on the top 20. Les Walmsley gets very sideways. A bit of the hippie shake out of the Cortina there.
Well, that was a tank slapper and a half for Les.
Ever. Absolutely, and if anyone's going to catch it, it's going to be Les, that's for sure.
Extremely talented driver, of course, very quick in a Charger in years gone by, and club champion. The car is still weaving around, so...
Well, I hope he hasn't got a deflating tyre.
Yeah, it looks a little bit like that, doesn't it? The car is all over the place, and Vic Draper getting a run on him now in the Datsun 1600, but he's on the outside. Can he sweep around in front of Les? Les says, no, mate, not happening. He's hanging around there. Vic Draper is keeping the boot in, challenging the Cortina, and now has the inside run down into the bottom part of the circuit, and Vic Draper may pull off a very neat pass, Darren.
Does too, pulls the inside. Les Walmsley's having nothing of it. He's going to dive bomb it into turn 11. Vic Draper, you get the feeling now, just needs to point it in a straight line, and the Datsun should have the wood on the Ford down the straight here. We get a good look now at our race leader. He's gobbling up car number 21. That's Graham Hill in the Mini. And you wonder if we had a bit of precipitation, and we're not going to get that this year, but Graham Hill would certainly have been not found down in the 20s or the mid-teens there. He would have been in P1, 2 or 3. David Brown has now rolled into pit lane, so your call was right there, Darren. I think he was hoping that whatever the issue was going to go away. He did an extra lap, but has gone back into the pits. Great to see. Glenn Miles is still battling on.
David Murphy in the XU1 has got past the Miles Chargers, so keep an eye on the number 101 white XU1, folks, of David Murphy, now up into 6th place and trying to track down that number 68 model Chevy Camaro of Jeff Mundy.
Have a look at this. Brad Tilley has just responded, and he's done a 38 dead. So he was languishing in the 39s. He's responded and held the gap just under 5 seconds to Pete McNiven. Great to see he's taken some learnings from 12 months ago here, and this battle is alive and well. This is exactly what the Tiranas were bought out of the factory to do. Homologation type of car, the GTR XU1, and that was to be strong at the end of the stint.
It's amazing when you think about the XU1 that it grew from the Vauxhall Viva.
Yes, yeah, and
at one
inside,
point, Murphy
puts it through
what
nicely.
David Murphy now into 5th place in the XU1. So for once we didn't do the commentator's kiss of death talking about the XU1, and he's made the move, Darren.
Well, yeah, and I guess we're talking about the Vauxhall there as well. There's a Tirana or a HB Tirana. It goes off Murphy.
Well, there it is.
There it is, right there. Yeah, there's a HB Tirana, which for all intents and purposes was a direct overture from the Vauxhall. So they did extend through them, and the Vauxhalls were a pretty mean thing in the European touring car world back in the day as well.
Not quite stock standard in those days.
No.
So that's disappointing there for Murphy, but he'll be fighting back, no doubt, just running wide there, catching a bit of grass. So he's now got the sights refocused on that Camaro of Jeff Mundy. He must be getting sick of looking at the back of it after getting in front there briefly.
I guess Miles is getting a bit sick of looking at the back of the Tirana too. He gave him a short back and sides about 3 or 4 laps ago. Now he's had to look at the back of the Lion badge on the back of that car. Here's the replay. Up at tank, drove down the inside nicely, and got to hand it to Monday though. There he just allowed the race to continue. Could have got nasty, but chose not to. The 22 Cortina now just moving out of the way.
Chris Stern in the Mustang has got past Miles in the Charger, so the Charger bugbear of brakes perhaps rearing its head now for Glenn Miles in the number 16 mustard coloured Charger. So Chris Stern now up into 6th place in the number 90 Mustang.
Here comes Peter Muleman sporting the Alan Moffat famous number 43 on the side of his Mustang, and he's just gone wide at the sweeper there, so he's helped himself off there. Big plume of dust coming out of Pete Muleman's car. A fearsome competitor, great driver is Peter Muleman, but just did himself absolutely no favours whatsoever. Just hearing a protesting set of tyres.
That is Max McKay. He has spun the number 38 Mini. Looks like it's a little bit hot too on the exit of the S's coming onto the old front straight, just trying to get the car going again, but a bit of steam coming out from underneath its diminutive bonnet.
Yeah, you don't like to see that. They don't hold a whole lot of water in them once they start to get hot like that. McNiven goes through. We've got a couple more cars that have just made their way into the pits, and one of them was Les Walmsley. So that's a shame. Les has found that couldn't press on any further. The issue with his car, as we have yellow flags covering the Mini parked just off the ultimate racing line, but you never can tell after turns 1 and 2 which is the ultimate racing line if you go side by side through that part of the track. There's our race leader, Brad Tilley, and we are on the final journey around here in the 2025 50k race.
Well, my arithmetic wasn't too great because we're going to get about 12 laps, not 16 or 17.
Yeah, so it's not going to go the full 5-0 either. Well, it is still a race, and that is for sure. The gap is now under 4 seconds, so McNiven has certainly stamped his authority on the latter part of this race, and it doesn't feel like it's going to be the fairy tale finish like it was in 2024.
Nevertheless, a great performance from McNiven to get the Rotary up there in 2nd place. Brad Tilley, though, what a performance in the number 28 Ford Mustang. Absolute clean sweep of the racing today. Brad Tilley takes out the win in the 50k Cup for Group N historic touring cars. A great drive, superbly prepared car too. Has been running for many years. The Tillys actually built this car to start with for Bob Cox. Then Bob hung up the helmet. Brad now taking on the driving duties in the number 28 and is really cleaning up in spectacular fashion. The little 289 wins are certainly working very hard and did the business this weekend. So 2 from 2 for Brad Tilley. McNiven was 2nd. Michael Michelli, another podium in his return to the circuit. No, Josh Axford, in fact, got up past Michelli on that final lap. Right at the flags. So what a drive from Josh Axford, the little BDA Escort, the South Australian, finishing on the podium.
Yeah, certainly one to watch there, Josh Axford, coming charging home at the line there, so getting on the podium. What a mix of cars, though, Daz, on the podium. A Mustang, an RX-2 and an Escort. You know, the Fords have got it, but I tell you what, when you put a 4-cylinder in the mix there, that makes it very interesting.
And who doesn't like a well-performing Escort, Darren? Getting pretty expensive now.
Yeah. Very cool coming through the forest. I tell you what, a BDA with Webbers on it, coming through the forest.
Well, of course, in England now, Bora Motorworks, I think they're called. They're producing
They are.
a brand new Mustang Escort licensed by Ford, completely computer designed with a carbon fibre body shell. It's going to be about 800 grand. So it's amazing that the demand is still there for Escorts, and soon you'll be able to buy a brand new one.
So that rounds it out for 2025 for the Group N Historic Touring Car races. The drivers just waving to the flaggers and trackside marshals in appreciation for all of the work that our volunteer officials do right around the track. And again, a race for the ages. This time Brad Tilley, I guess, grabs back the honour that he dropped off last year, and Pete McNiven has to look at the 2024 trophy and say, well, I did do it last year, I'll take second place this year, and I dare say we'll be back for more in 2026, as all of our cars have now taken the checkered flag. The DNFs to Walmsley, Burns, and a couple of others there as they retired throughout the race. Good shots of Glenn Miles's car, and he got home ultimately in 8th place there as well. Darren Knight, thank you very much for your time right throughout the Group N's here today, Historic Touring Cars and Invited, and been fantastic to have you with all your expertise on this category.
Thank you, Darren. Of course, we'll have more Group N Historic Touring Car action at the Equity One Sandown Historics in November. So second week in November, folks, after the Melbourne Cup week. So that is always a fantastic meeting. We don't know how lucky we are to have a racetrack right in the middle of suburbia. It's quite unique the world over to have a racetrack that close to the population. Always a fantastic meeting put on by the VHRR. That's the Equity One Sandown Historics, second weekend in November.
You're sticking around, mate. You've got one more race to go here with the Group A's and Group C's. They'll be on track next. We're going to take a much needed break between now and when those cars roll out. We'll be back live at the Winton Festival of Speed for 2025 in just a few moments.